Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be covering the newly announced Path of Exile Scourge League in detail. We're going to be going for some massive theory crafting because this is a super min-maxable league reveal. And I gotta say, man, this is the most rewarding league I've ever seen revealed. Full stop. It tops Delirium, it tops Harvest. They have gone all out with the rewards, and I can tell you just by looking, as long as they don't change anything, this is going to be the most rewarding league of all time. Full stop, exclamation mark. So in this video, obviously, we're going to be getting into the high end of how this is going to play out in maps and kind of really starting to dig into kind of min-max stuff so that you guys are fully prepared and fully equipped with some ideas and some strats before you even get your hands on the league. But in order for this video to make sense, we're not going to go over the basics. We're going to leave that to the professionals. And if you haven't already, I would recommend going out and checking the Path of Exile livestream Scourge trailer right here, skipping right to this point here, Scourge content reveal, and watching the 6 minutes of where they specifically explain exactly how the basic mechanics of Scourge work. It's great. We're going to be talking advanced stuff here and how it's really going to play out in maps and endgame and how you're going to really juice this thing up to the max. So go check that out. I'll link it down below. You guys absolutely need to watch that before watching this. But if you checked that out already, let's get into the meat of it. Okay, all right, so the first thing you guys are going to want to observe is the limits. What are the boundaries of the Scourge mechanic? So let's get into it first of all. So, of course, when you're playing Scourge League, you will know that you get obviously the blood device, and you have that, you socket that in, and you get your blood gauge up here. So you can see this gauge, it's nice and clear. And as you're slaying monsters, this thing will completely fill up. Pretty much no one is going to want to shift into Scourge outside of, Acts 1 to 10 until it is completely full, unless you're kind of just getting the tail end of the map and you don't have much juice left. But you're going to always want to shift when this thing is at max. And after shifting, the full bar will actually take a hit. You don't get the full bar in there. It will get reduced a little bit, but you will get around 25 seconds on the clock, and that seems to be the kind of uniform amount that you get in all the Scourge mechanic encounters that I've seen so far. So 25 seconds in the clock. That's going to push most people towards clear speed related builds. You're going to want something with AoE, you're going to want something which moves fast, and you're going to want something that kills monsters very, very effectively. So already that's going to dictate your league starter. You're going to want to go with something like ED Contagion, something with mass AoE, or something that you just clear really, really juicily. And of course, it further reinforces the clear speed meta in the end game, and it's pretty damn strong. Okay, so 25 seconds on the clock. What else do we need to know about this? Okay, so the main thing here that you need to know is that you can shift in and out of Scourge League as many times as you want per zone, as long as there's monsters to fill up the Scourge blood bar. This is incredibly important because I have also confirmed with the devs at this current time in the current iteration of Scourge is that the monsters respawn or spawn in additional monsters every time you fill that bar and you go back in. So what this essentially means is that you could, in theory, full clear a map in 25 seconds, if you can even do that. And then you can fill the bar up again, and then full clear it again, fill the bar up again, full clear it again, over and over and over and over and over and over again. And this is a direct statement from the devs. This is the intended way that it works. We don't know how many monsters spawn in per, kind of redo, but it's definitely going to be pretty damn insane. So it's a massive more multiplier on your loot and your map and everything else in that kind of context, okay? So it's very, very insane. Now, what is the limit? What's the kind of penalty, the downside for shifting into Scourge so many times? Let's say you have a massively juiced up map. Well, you could be shifting, 10 or 20 times in theory. If on average, a normal map, you can shift 2 or 3 times and you get a 100% deli map with all the scarabs on, well, you're going to be shifting 20 or 30 times if it's 10 times the mobs. You kind of get what I'm getting at here. So what's the penalty? Well, the main thing that's going to come into play here is the stackable debuff here on the top left. So this is a debuff that you gain 1 stack, it seems, per 1 second that you exist in the Scourge alternate reality. So, if you spend 30 seconds in there, you'll get 30 stacks. And this stack, as confirmed on Reddit by the community team, basically gives you the debuff of taking 1% increased damage taken from mobs. Scourge mobs specifically. So, if you have 30 stacks, you take 30% more damage from Scourge mobs. Now, the interesting thing about this debuff is that it persists even after you shift out of the Scourge dimension. So let's say you start your map, you shift in, you spend 30 seconds in, you get 30 stacks, you shift out. And then the next time you shift in, you'll still have those 30 stacks and it'll continue to stack up on you. So the more times you shift, the more and more dangerous it becomes, and the more and more chance that you're going to get one shot and instantly kicked out of this Scourge reality, in the end of the day. So that's going to really push players towards, very, very tanky builds, or very, very high damage builds, or very, very high, kind of like almost one-shot protection, kind of immortal dodge, acro, phase, well, not, dodge, but, evasion builds, evasive builds, which don't die from one hits, because obviously that's an incredible penalty to get kicked out of your Scourge dimension. Okay, so that's pretty damn important, and that's going to be the main barrier to your juice levels in the end game. How many of these stacks can you deal with? How many of the damage mods can you deal with, etc. So it's definitely, it's going to be unlimited juice depending on how powerful your character is, which is very, very interesting. We've never had a mechanic that really allowed you to get to that amount of juice before. It's like mega giga juice. All right, let's get into the next set, the real rewards. Okay, so we haven't even gone into the rewards yet. Let's get into the rewards. What are you actually getting from the Scourge League? Well, you're getting one primary thing, that is, and that's Scourge Crafting, which we're going to call baking items from now on, because that's what Chris Wilson called it, and I think it's pretty damn good. Okay, so you can put items, obviously, in your blood crucible, and you can bake them with the Scourge juice. And then after it's finished baking, you can transform them, giving them a Scourge modifier. So it's important to note that this modifier is not an implicit, so it's not like synthesized implicits or, like corruptions or anything like that. It's not an enchant, it's its own thing. So you can have it on top of everything else, which means there's no downside in doing it, outside of the fact that it corrupts your items after you apply a Scourge modifier to them. Okay, so basically, the most min-max character possible will have a Scourge modifier on every single one of its equipable slots. And that's another note. You can have one of these on every single equipable slot in the character inventory pane, with the exception of flasks. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Scourge mods. And these Scourge mods, I'm sure you guys have seen from the video and from the announcement page, are completely insane. They're completely ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd how good these things are. And it's no understatement to say, I can't actually find the announcement page right now. It's going to be pretty annoying. It's no understatement to say that, these are build-defining mods. Let's see if I can find it. We'll just go pathofexile.com. Path of Exile, here we go. They are absolutely insane. They give you, keystones. They can give you +1 arrow and a quiver. They can give you +1 skill gems. It's completely ridiculous what it gives you. Okay, it looks like we're getting with some porter packs here. All right, so let's go down to some of the mods that we see here. Also, quick spoiler: you can click this button for more items here, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, you got stuff like curses. You got movement speed, resistances, all sorts of stuff like that. But they also come with a downside. You're getting one upside and one downside. And most of the downsides are pretty extreme. Build destroying extreme. Like deal no cold damage, minus res is pretty tame. No life regen, that's build destroying. There's basically tons of build destroying ones. But the important thing here to note is that pretty much every character is going to want to have some level of Scourgeness on all of their items, if possible. And the reason for this is because unlike normal corruptions, there is no downside to these. The only downside is that you cannot modify the item further, and you may destroy it for your build by having an incredibly powerful downside be applied to it, like deal no physical damage if you're a physical damage build. But most people are going to be scourging every single one of their items, and of course this can also be used on uniques, which is very, very strong indeed. Now, there's quite a lot of nuance to this, though, as you can Scourge an item multiple times. There's 3 different tiers of Scourge. Now, the thing that really, really is important here is that there's also 3 different types of Scourge modifiers. There's T1, T2, and T3. And of course, the most powerful ones are T3, with I'm sure a lot of the keystones being T3, and for example, +1 arrows most likely is T3. You can see this has Scourged T3 on it. Most likely you're going to need to have T3 Scourge in order to get that +1 arrow. Now, here's the catch. If you Scourge an item the first time, you're going to get all T1 mods minimum. Most likely it's going to be pretty much all T1 mods every time. And those aren't the most powerful ones. So you can scrap those and you can Scourge it again, which is going to, cost you more juice in baking it, so more grinding. But you can also upgrade that, and then in the tier 2 Scourged, when you upgrade it again, you get guaranteed T2 mods. Okay, that's good. You can get some really good ones there, and overall pretty strong. And then you can Scourge it a third time, and you can get the best mods. Now, the catch is, on the third Scourge, you get the best mods, but you also can't get rid of or re-roll the Scourge a further time. On T1 and T2, upgrading it will actually wipe the mods of the previous one and then give you new ones, meaning you have a chance to kind of get rid of the bad ones. But on the third one, you're stuck with whatever you Scourged for it, meaning that your item could be completely destroyed if you're a cold damage build and you deal no cold damage. That really sucks, obviously, and it'll pretty much completely break the item for your build and for most builds, right? Okay, so this is actually incredibly powerful, and it's going to massively stimulate the endgame economy of Path of Exile in a really good way. Okay, so you can obviously Scourge unique items, right? You can Scourge everything in the game, and everyone's going to want to be Scourging their items because there's brand new content which requires you to do so and requires that power, and also, it's like massive power for pretty much free. There's pretty much, there's an opportunity, of course, of destroying your item, but, it's not immediately destroying it. It's kind of like a small chance to destroy it. Okay, so most people are going to be Scourging the items. And most people are going to try and probably go for the T3 Scourge. They're going to continually Scourge until they get something good, or they're going to force T3 to get the best modifiers. Now, if you Scourge an item enough and it rolls pretty poorly, let's say like a 6-link Shavs, and you roll it really poorly on the third Scourge, that Shavs is pretty much for the most part dead. No one's going to want to buy that, or it's not going to be that good. Let's say you roll, like Resolute Technique, and everyone's playing crit, and you rolled it on a Shavron's Wrappings. That's pretty much destroyed, meaning a lot of unique items are probably going to leave the economy that way, meaning that, no one's going to want them, or they're going to be super duper niche, and that's going to give players a reason to continually acquire those unique items. So, all of those uniques which kind of go to zero and they're worth nothing, people will be buying those instead, Scourging them up in chances at trying to get really, really good items, which is pretty good. I think it's really good that they're going to be taking items out of the system with the Scourge system. That's fantastic and exactly what should be happening here. So fantastic for the endgame economy. All right. So of course, this can stack on top of corruptions. It can stack on top of synth mods. It can stack on top of enchantments, everything in the game. So it's completely free power. Everyone's going to be Scourging every item. Now, of course, there is a few implications to this. Mirroring items, not so appealing anymore, is it? Because obviously, Scourge items are corrupted. You can't mirror a corrupted item, and the best items will be Scourged items, pretty much guaranteed at this point. So Mirrors of Calandra will go down in stock, in my opinion, overall, because it's much better to craft a middle-of-the-road item, 10 or 20% worse than a mirror item, and just Scourge it up, and, keep Scourging them because they're so cheap to make, and get a really good item, and then it's better than the mirror item anyway. So it's probably a pretty good thing for the game, but it does mean that crafting mirror tier items is no longer going to be quite as good due to the existence of Scourge mods, because you can't Scourge a mirror item either, it seems, because mirrored items are unmodifiable. So overall, it's probably going to encourage you to go for middle of the road items or unique items instead of these high ultra end game kind of mirror tier perfect 6 T1 perfect rolled affix kind of items, which is pretty interesting in my opinion. Definitely a new way to play, which we haven't seen before. Super duper cool. All right, let's move on to some more juice here. Okay, so we have the next thing here to talk about, which is the new currencies. So these currencies, in my opinion, aren't going to be super duper impactful. They obviously do drop from the Scourge mechanic. I don't think they're going to be selling for a lot. They do exist, but I don't think they're anything to write home about. People may use them to kind of pre-Scourge like a Shavs and then try and 6-link it. That sounds very expensive. It sounds pretty tedious depending on how many of these kind of drop in. But overall, I don't see them being super duper impactful as the bench kind of crafts still exist. So I wouldn't be too hyped about these. I'm sure they'll be worth something, but I don't think they'll be worth like insane amounts. I could be wrong there. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is the Crucible. So the Crucible is a new form of passive income everyone should be using. So Chris Wilson in the announcement revealed that you can get pretty much 2 item Scourge slots, so that's equipment, and 1 map Scourge slot. So the map Scourge slot is going to be an absolute money maker. It's going to print money for you. So absolutely everyone, without fail, should be baking a Scourge map constantly. Due to the fact that this is the new pinnacle content, it is completely insane. We'll get into the rewards in a second, but the rewards are pretty much exceed the level of 100% delirium in a lot of cases. If the rares and the game kind of functions as we know and we believe, it's going to be completely way past 100% deli in terms of its rewards. Okay, so obviously deli orbs are expensive, maps that have deli orbs on them are expensive, so if you can create those by just mapping and doing the Scourge mechanic, that's going to be incredibly profitable for you to do them yourself or for you to sell them. So you should absolutely be baking the Scourge maps ASAP, it's going to be really, really good. Obviously you can sell them, you can do them, whatever. Now, the other thing here though is that there is also modifiers on the Scourge tree, which incentivize you to bake normal items, not necessarily just for the Scourge mods, not necessarily for yourself, but for profit. So there is one specific note on that which says that you have an X% chance on transform, which is after you finish baking the item, to give you a socket which is unlinked to become linked. So basically, you know, if I go and paint here and I have the sockets, and you've got like an item which is like, you know, like this, and then you got that, and you bake it up with Scourge, and it's got a 10% chance to link. Well, you can link it into a 6 link 10% of the time. So 1 in 10 times you bake the item, you're going to get a Divine Orb, which is super duper good. So you can bake 2 of these per time. So you can basically fully monetize your Scourge slots, and you can get a ton of juice for free just by mapping in Alk and Go, which is super duper awesome. And I fully expect people to probably take advantage of this once Scourge comes out. We haven't even seen all the talents, but baking maps, baking items for 6 links, definitely going to be a thing. I don't know if that's going to be the best use, but overall going to be pretty strong. Another thing that's going to be really powerful is baking unique items. So like baking up a shavs, all of those things to try and get really high chase Scourge mods on them. It's going to be basically like double corrupting, but you can do it while you're mapping. It's going to be completely crazy. And getting the best mods is definitely going to be a massive chase. Whether or not you want to like kind of pre-craft it, pre-6 link it, maybe even pre-double corrupt it, and then Scourge it up. There's so many different things you can consider and go for with this system. It's absolutely crazy. Picking the right unique, picking everything. Oh my goodness, it's just insane. And that's not even considering the min-max potential on your own items. That's just for profit. So super duper good. Anyone who figures out what mods to Scourge up and all sorts of stuff like that is going to be making a ton of currency. So super awesome. All right, let's move on. We got a lot of stuff to cover. Okay. All right, so what's up next here? So we have the meta progression. We got that. Yep, baking maps. Okay, you can obviously allocate all the nodes, which is super duper awesome. Everyone's probably going to be doing that in the end game. Similar to how people max out the flares and the delve stuff and all sorts of stuff like that. All right, let's get into the end game. How's this going to play out in maps? All right, so this one's a little bit more complicated than you would expect. So let's pretend this is a city square map right here. The old classic, which isn't obviously in the new league, but we'll use it for an example. So obviously we have a basic understanding of how the Scourge League works. Let's say that you clear out the map here, you're running through it, and you fill up your Scourge bar around this point here. Immediately after you finish your Scourge bar, you should shift into the Scourge dimension and you should get going. All right, so you're gonna shift in here and we'll do an S, and now you're in Scourge. So your character is there and you're gonna clear all the way through it here. And you're gonna clear out as many Scourge monsters as you can in the 25 to 30 seconds that you have. And then you're obviously gonna have all the loot drop here, like boop, boop, boop. You should not be looting any of it. Similar to how you use a Delirium Mirror, don't touch any of it. And then you're going to get teleported all the way back to the start of where you started your Scourge. And all the monsters you slayed will obviously be slayed, and all the loot that you accumulated will obviously be there. Now, obviously you've got your buff that you stacked up, the debuff is there, and you're going to be moving through a next set of pack to go onto your second Scourge encounter. Now this is where it gets interesting. So obviously you got teleported back to your first encounter where you started. You're going to be slaying the monsters, picking up the loot from the Scourge encounter you just did, slaying. Now of course you get to about here and you fill up your Scourge bar again. Right, so you got your Scourge, you're going to go back into the Scourge over here. Okay, so obviously the interesting part here, as I mentioned, is that after you activate the Scourge again for the second time, new monsters spawn. It's not all fully cleared out as you did in the first time, so you could, in theory, go back the other way, right where you came, and there'll be new monsters there, new loot to accumulate, and awesome new drops to get. Or you can kind of go this way, so it's almost going to be an interesting scenario in which the layout is so critically important because you can continually clear the most efficient part of the layout over and over and over and over again. There's no such thing as like finishing the Scourge. As long as there's monsters to slay, there's blood in the bar, you're going to be able to continually clear the map over and over again and accumulate more and more Scourge rewards as you go through the map. So kind of finding the perfect layout is going to be more important than ever, and I imagine a map like Dunes is probably going to be the ideal pick because it's just a big open circle, and you jump in, you Scourge it up, you run around as fast as possible, get teleported back, fill up the bar, run around again, and this is the kind of stuff that you need to consider because the monsters respawn, and it's just all about getting as many monsters slain in that small window as possible with the ritual, the blood thing. Very, very important there, and very, very interesting. So obviously we have a ton more to talk about here. Let's get into a bit of the Q&A though I asked, just in the DMs here. So I wanted to get a pretty good handle on exactly what was possible in Scourge League. So I asked a few questions to GGG, which they were kind enough to get back to me on. And let's go into some of the answers. So the first one I had here is, when in Scourge mode, can you continue to do Breach, Legion, and Blight encounters? And the answer to this was, you can't activate Blight or Legion while inside the alternate reality, but if you started them before entering, they'll continue. Breach, you can activate inside. Okay, so there's pretty much no reason that you would want to activate Breach, Blight, or anything inside the actual alternate reality, as you're wasting blood bar juice. You want to be slaying as many monsters outside of the alternate reality as possible, and exclusively slaying Scourge monsters in the alternate reality, which we'll get into in a second here. So you want to exclusively keep all of your Legion juice and everything like that in the real world, and all of the demon stuff in the demon world. So you want to be really careful about what you're popping and when. You don't want to just stack it all up at once. All right, next question I asked was, when in Delirium, are you also in Delirium in Scourge mode? And the answer was yes. So that basically to me means that it's going to drop Simulacrum Splinters potentially. It's going to fill up your Delirium kind of bars, your loot bars potentially, and it's going to be completely insane. Overall, obviously the difficulty is also going to carry over to the monsters in the Scourge dimension as well. So it's going to be completely very, very difficult. It's going to be very, 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 very highly skilled. All right. Next up, do Sextant map Watchstone modifiers persist in Scourge mode? Yes. So basically what this means is if you roll Nemesis monsters, drop 3 additional currency items, that's going to work in Scourge land as well as normal land. So of course, let me paint you a picture here, okay? So as we mentioned here in this diagram here, let's say that you turbo juice a map to have 10 times the amount of monsters in it. So on average, you can shift into Scourge 2 to 3 times. On your 10 times the monsters map, well, you can shift in 20 to 30 times. And you have Nemesis monsters drop 3 additional currency items. And rare monsters 100% spawn in Scourge. And you're very, very efficient, and you can clear a ton of them per Scourge entry. Well, that's going to be so much damn currency in that map, you are not going to know what to do with it. It's going to be ridiculous because, you can shift into the Scourge as many times as you want, assuming you have monsters, and you can survive the more damage taken debuff that's being on you. It's going to be completely insane. I actually cannot even understand how this is going to function, dude. It's going to be off the wall. Okay, obviously this works with other stuff as well, but Nemesis monsters drop 3 additional currencies ones is the main one which comes to mind. Which also per daemon with Beyond, I'm not sure if the monsters spawn beyond portals, but that would be interesting too. Can you enter Scourge mode multiple times per map? It was a yes, obviously. And the last question I asked is, do Scourge monsters respawn in between your entries? And the answer was no. but new ones spawn whenever you enter. Okay, so new monsters spawn. So I'm assuming that gives you more additional chances at bosses. It's going to give you new rare packs, new monsters. All overall, it's going to be a pretty wild experience overall. I don't think we've ever seen this level of juice, man. It's completely insane. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rewards a little bit more in detail here. Let's go into the page. Okay, so the primary thing we want to discuss here is the maps. The maps. Baking up the Scourge maps is by far going to be one of the most rewarding things you can do in the new Scourge League. If I can locate them. Where are they? Hello? Let's see. They're definitely here somewhere. Improved endgame systems. There it is. No, that's not it. I think it's going to be Atlas Endgame. No. Where are the new skills? There they are. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about these rewards because they are completely ridiculous. Okay. So the first thing up here is that we want to talk about is the fully corrupted Scourge T10 map. So it's been baked 10 times. And you can see here that obviously it's got 120% more damage. It's got 45% less damage that you deal. And it's also got 300 life degen per second. So that's like a turbo blood rage on you. It's ridiculous. To survive that, you're going to need to have a pretty beefy character. And it's going to need to have a lot of either leech or life regen because you're going to be degenning like crazy. Obviously it says here that you shift into the nightmare on killing a rare or unique enemy in the normal map. So obviously you're going to be shifting in constantly. It's going to be, kind of ping pong, backwards and forwards. But the main thing here is the rewards. Rare Scourge monsters drop 3 additional maps and rare Scourge monsters drop 7 additional stacked decks. We were just talking about how many times you could potentially shift in and out of Scourge. It's gonna be completely absurd how much loot is dropping in these Scourge maps. I actually cannot fathom it. It's completely crazy. You got stuff like the tainted currencies. You got 2 basic currencies, which is just Nemesis on top of normal Nemesis 3. And you also have stuff like Scarabs, which is here on a Scourged T1 map. An additional Scarab. It's basically a Scarab Delirium Orb, but it's from Nemesis, basically. It's like a Nemesis 3 combined with Scarabs. Insane. It's just going to be completely ridiculous. Scourge is by far one of the most rewarding mechanics we've ever seen just off of this reveal alone. Let's break it down a little bit further though for you guys to kind of give you guys the full details. So Scourge is a straight up more multiplier on everything else in the game because the more monsters you slay, the more entries into Scourge you get, which means the more rare monsters you get to slay, which juices up the kind of amount of rewards that you can get on top of that even further. So it's like basically like when Delirium was introduced, it was a more multiplier on top of all the rewards in a normal map. Well, Scourge is a more multiplier on top of Delirium, which is a more multiplier on top of everything. It's absolutely out of its mind. And I don't even know if they're going to allow this to go in, but if they do, this is going to be absolutely the most rewarding league that we've ever seen by far, just off of what we've seen here. But I will point out you're going to need a pretty damn well-rounded character to do this content. It seems absolutely brutal. With one of the mods, I don't think it's here, dealing 6,000 fire damage to you as soon as you enter the nightmare. So that's about 1,500 if you have 75 resist. If that ends up being chaos damage, you could just get one shot. So it's going to be pretty brutal, but overall, easily going to be one of the most rewarding leagues we've ever seen to date. Just to kind of sum it up, guys, we have brand new levels of power on all gear slots that everyone can acquire and can be applied to every item, no exception. Synth items, uniques, normal items, everything, with the exception of mirrored items. This is basically massive power creep, way past the level or on the power level of cluster jewels. It's crazy. And then we also have new levels of actual endgame content and power and maps and kind of juice and a reason to kind of go after that gear. So we have the method to get the power, and then we have the reason that we want the power. A perfect combo. Exactly what we want from a PoE league. The rewards are clearly defined and the content is compelling. Oh my god, they've absolutely nailed it. If you're as hyped as I am, man, make sure you sub. We're going to be playing a lot of PoE Scourge. We're going to be min-maxing the absolute living daylights out of it. We're going to be making a ton of characters. So if you want to see more content, like, subscribe, comment down below what you're excited about, or if you've got any more things that I missed, definitely let me know. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.